keep the instructions to a very minimum to allow more questions. I'd just like to point out some of the highlights of the housing service. Working with tenants in rent arrears last year has meant 650 of our tenants have kept their property. 650 of our tenants have kept their properties, but equally 60 tenants were evicted for either rent arrears or tenancy breaches where they were not engaging with us at the council. Customer satisfaction in our responsive repairs service delivered by our partners Mears is up from 78% in 2016 to 93% in May of this year. So from it being 1 household in 5 being satisfied with the service, this is now down to 1 in 14. Repair satisfaction is up from 86% to 94%, and satisfaction with the appointments being made is up from 92 to 95, something which is well worthy of praise. It isn't all positive, and I've never been one to hide bad news. We all know that sunlight is the best disinfectant when it comes to missed performance targets. So page 62 outlines where we've not met expectations. Some of these are where we're not comparing like for like. For example, the number of complaints where we abolished the concerns category, something which in my opinion masks the true number of complaints. Some are outside of our control. For example, where we've seen a significant increase in the number of homeless cases being housed in temporary accommodation. Just to focus on that for a second, the combination of landlords withdrawing short-term tenancies and other factors have seen an increase in homelessness applications and eventually those being housed in temporary accommodation. Now, couple this with the lack of private rented sector properties and London authorities offering premiums to Thurrock landlords to take their homeless, the number of temporary accommodation both inside and outside the borough is definitely to rise. We have started to look at alternatives to this, but as they're at a very early stage of development, I can't say much more than that. As we've seen previously, portfolio holders for housing, if we're allowed to list everything that's going on and going well, there'll be little time for questions at all. Indeed, we'd have to extend standing orders by a day or so. So I'm not going to belittle the good team by not giving them a well done and a fantastic praise. They have really pulled together over the past 12 months, a review going on, they carried on the good work, and we've seen KPI after KPI increase, although some of those where they have decreased have been outside of our control. So, Mr. Mayor, I'll throw over to questions.
Thank you, Councillor Gleason. Councillor Spillman, as Chair of Housing Overview and Solution Committee, do you have any questions?
Yes, a few. I'd just like to say a couple of positive things to start with. The rent team continue to be, 10 years, best team I've dealt with in the council. The rent collections are still good, and I like the fact that the number of evictions have remained at a low level. Testament to them. The repairs from the evidence I'm seeing coming through my desk, but there's still improvements to be made. But we are anecdotally seeing a few less complaints that we used to, so well done for that. And I'm embarrassed by saying that the new management team in the housing department is performing far better for members and for, I think, delivering better than the previous team, so well done. My main query though is around the new build and homelessness situation. Now, unfortunately, although there's new builds on there, none of them are new proposals since you took over it. And my concern is that we're going to become, the new build programs can become the no build program. I just think that we need to look at much more radical action in terms of attracting housing associations to build, at looking at the major rollout of Gloriana, potentially, and commission a report to look into the cost benefit of releasing the borrowing on the HRA to borrow to build. Now, I'm not saying that we'll get...
Councillor Spillman, you get me a question, otherwise nobody else will be able to ask it.
I will. Will the council agree to look very closely at the cost benefit of borrowing to build and lobbying the government to release the borrowing rates on the HRA?
Councillor Gleason.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Spillman, not only for the praise of the team, They're quite right, rent team, 99% collection, still 650 people kept in properties and only 60 removed. It's fantastic. And a new management team, I think it goes without saying, it's strength to strength to strength. That's filtering all the way down to every single member of staff. They're doing a cracking job. The short answer to your question is yes. I've already actually started to ask those preliminary questions. We do need to borrow to build. We need to build in a new way. The way we've been building is far too expensive and doesn't really deliver within a short period of time. If you think how long it took for the Echo, for instance, to be delivered and indeed Bracelet Close, we can't keep on waiting 3 or 4 years for these to happen. We need to be getting in there on the ground and getting these properties built as fast as possible. And that's not just what we will build. You're quite right, it's also encouraging others to come to the borough, including housing associations, but also being really tight on properties that are supposed to be for social rents during other new builds. And we need to be sticking to that 30% plus, irrespective of what the builders are saying. If you can't afford to build 30% plus social housing, you can't really afford to build the housing at all.
Thank you, Councillor Gresham. Councillor Snell, do you have any questions? Councillor Garish, questions?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you very much, Councillor Gledhill, for your report tonight. One item I will just ask on is around antisocial behaviour and what the leader believes he needs to do to improve satisfaction in that area. I think that's one of the areas that's very targeted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Garish, for a fantastic question. Antisocial behaviour has always been one of those things I feel been battered about between local authority, police, local authority, and nobody's taking responsibility for it. Yes, we do have Thurrock Safety Partnership, but again, lots of words, but no real action. There does need to be an increment on people on the ground. There does need to be a much better way for residents to notify the council anonymously of what's going on. I've certainly recently dealt with one case where the woman who reported it to us was targeted for some time before the police stepped in. And we do need to work with the police to make sure they understand it's a priority. Yes, they do have to wait for so many odd events to happen, but they've got to be much better at recording it, they've got to be much better at reacting to it, as have we. So as part of the review, antisocial behaviour is one of those things that, the antisocial behaviour team, is one of those things that is high up and there to change.
Thank you. I've got questions from members. Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Question to Councillor Begel. In light of the Grenfell Tower disaster, what other work will the council be doing in order to ensure the residents' safety in flatted accommodation across the borough, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Collins. I won't repeat everything I've already said twice. I'm sure I'm going to have to repeat it a number of times this evening. So I'm quite happy to do that to reassure our residents. But it's not just about tower blocks. We also have medium-rise, low-rise and ordinary houses that we need to make sure people are safe in. But as we all know, as councillors, we go out each month, each week, knocking on doors, we go into the flats, and what do we see? Always full of prams, always full of bikes, always full of clutter. We need to go that little bit further. It's not just about the tower blocks that we have, it's about the blocks that everybody else has. So I've asked officers to look to see how we can write to as many of the managing agents of these properties as possible, just to remind them of their obligations and to get them to go around and do their inspections to make sure their properties and their residents are safe. Everybody who lives in Thurrock is a resident of Thurrock, and everybody deserves the right to be able to live in a safe home, free from the danger should the worst happen. So that is one of the targets we've aimed for.
Thank you. Councillor Butterhead.
Thank you for your report, Councillor Gledhill. According to The Independent, the number of families being declared homeless has rocketed by more than a third since the Conservative government took power in 2010. This is despite the numerous pledges to act on the matter, despite an almost annual glut of speeches, soundbites and endless photographs of George Osborne in a hard hat. Government clearly won't act, so the council needs to. What's the plan?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Apothecary. You might see me once or twice in a hard hat, but it doesn't suit my hair at least. You're quite right, homelessness has been on the increase, but this is not to do just with any government intervention or lack of intervention. We've got to remember, if we go back to the previous government, no social housing building for 10 years. So we've got an awful lot of catching up to do. as I explained to Councillor Spillman, one of the things we'll be looking at is to ask government to lift the cap on borrowing to allow us to borrow money to be able to build, attract more social landlords into Thurrock, and indeed to make sure that in the private rented sector that they're not leaking out to London authorities, which will pay that slight bit more. Let's have a little bit of pride in Thurrock from our own landlords and try and let to ourselves first. One of the big things that we do need to do, as mentioned, is to look at alternatives to the common wet build construction. I know Councillor Coxall's probably looking daggers in my back at the moment as a former bricklayer, but these things take time, they are expensive, and they really do need to change. He is, isn't he? So we are looking at other methods, including modular homes and homes that we literally put on site within hours and then connected to services. Fingers crossed, if we can get the money for them, we could potentially have houses on site within weeks rather than within years.
Thank you, Councillor Phillip.
Thank you, Mr. Question of the portfolio. We've just heard about the housing. Can you let me know if anything's been done regarding the number of people living in properties that with more bedrooms than their needs?
Thank you, Councillor Piccolo. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, there is obviously there was a scheme some time ago that helped people downsize into smaller properties. The problem we have, of course, is the number of small properties that become available, and indeed the number of people that need to swap down or increase up. There isn't really, in my opinion, a big enough scheme to be able to match the two. It's all down to people doing it themselves. So one of the things that I intend to do as soon as we've moved forward with the housing stock review is to actually say, right, what can we do to match up those that need more bedrooms and those that need less bedrooms. There is a reason for the single room supplement that was introduced, and that was to make sure that people that are underhoused are into the right side properties. And we really do need to move forward on that. So, as I say, it's one of the things we will be doing as soon as the housing stock review is over.
Councillors, I've got 4 councillors left who wish to speak. I've got only 3 minutes, and the leader needs to sum up. So I'll take one more question, Councillor Redsill. If you're waiving your right to sum up, then that means we can have 2 more questions. So Councillor Redsill, please ask a question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Glenhill, for the report. I'll keep it quick. Just to ask you about garages, I know a full review is in progress and it's coming to a conclusion at the moment. Could you tell us if garages are going to look aesthetically better than they do now?
For every penny we spend on garages, it's a penny we're not spending on people's houses. However, we're not going to attract people if our garages look a mess. So yes, there will be a programme to make them look better, but it will not be at a massive cost.
Thank you. Councillor Maney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. During his report, the leader touched on ways in which the council might be able to fund the production of more social housing. With 8,000 people on the housing waiting list, I just wondered if the leader could advise whether the council's actually assessed how much in monthly terms it would actually cost us to build enough houses.
Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Maney, for that question. I did do a quick calculation not so long back based on the cost of Bruins Court, the Echoes and properties appraised close. If we add them all together, divide by 3 times by 8,000, it's £2.2 billion. If we were building up 400 properties a year, that would be 20 years. So that is the kind of scale we're looking at just to get the 8,000 people that are currently on the allocations list into properties. And that's not assuming that we actually got the right number of properties and so on, but £2.2 billion is an extremely large amount of money for us to borrow to get those 8,000 people into homes.
Thank you. Councillor Watkins, excuse me, one more.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you to the portfolio holder for his report. Are there any plans to regenerate any of the council's estates, and if so, which ones and what will they look like?
There are plans to regenerate the estates, but again, this tax on from Councillor Spillman's question and indeed Councillor Maney's question, it is about the money that we can generate to be able to not only regenerate them, but to build new properties on there. Areas were highlighted under the previous administration situation and they're being re-looked at again. But yes, there will be a regeneration plan that will be on hold until such time as we actually got the cash to be able to deliver those.
Councillor Kelly, if you're quick.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. With new council properties being delivered to Braceborough Close, the Echoes and Bruins Court over the past couple of years, can the leader outline whether they represent good value for money? Thank you.
Good value for money. Sorry, thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Kelly. Good value for money is perspective from different people. Those residents that are living in these properties think it's absolutely fantastic good for money, fantastic value for money, and to that I do agree. However, was this good financial use of money? £300,000 the average cost to build at Braceborough Close, £250,000 to build flats over at the Echoes. I think it was about 235, 236 to build at Bruins Court. These properties, if they were marketed by an outside company, wouldn't even break even. They just wouldn't get that in the current market, or they'd be lucky to get it in the current market. So, as I mentioned before, we do need to be looking at other alternatives to the wet build. We need to be making sure that when we build at a decent cost, and whilst we can put overspecs in, we need to be a lot more mindful this money is only coming from somewhere, and that's from borrowing, which you've got to pay back at some point.